Yakin semua di sini sudah tahu siapa dia. Semua penjahat di kota ini menganggap dia sebagai legenda dunia hitam.
Kerjaan apa lagi yang lu buat? Hah?
Sini lo.
Ayo, cabut.
Bukan berarti gue gak jago orang. Gue punya tempat di sini.
Bawa hasil. Lo
Dengar bangsat! Lu dikirim buat mampus mati.
jalan terus. Ikut gua.
Released in 2011 and directed by Gareth Evans, The Raid Redemption became one of the most celebrated action films ever made. Made on a relatively small budget, the movie shocked audiences around the world with its brutal fight choreography and intense pacing. Starring Iko Uwais as Rama, the film transformed Indonesian martial arts into a global phenomenon and proved that action cinema could be both simple and incredibly effective. With almost no wasted moments and an atmosphere filled with tension, the movie quickly earned a reputation as one of the greatest action thrillers of the modern era. Before diving into the story, make sure to follow the channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments for more movie explanations and reviews. Early in the morning, a young police officer named Rama wakes up and begins preparing for a dangerous mission. Before leaving, he spends a quiet moment with his pregnant wife, who worries about his safety. Rama reassures her and asks for her prayers. He then joins his fellow officers who are gathering for an operation that many of them believe will be straightforward. The team is led by Sergeant Jaka and supervised by Lieutenant Wahyu. Their target is a notorious crime lord named Tama Riyadi, a ruthless man who controls a heavily fortified apartment building in Jakarta. The building has become a sanctuary for murderers, drug dealers, thieves, and violent gang members. Anyone seeking protection from the law can find refuge there, provided they obey Tama's rules. As the officers travel toward the building, they receive instructions about the operation. Their mission is to secretly enter the apartment complex, reach the top floor, and arrest Tama before his criminal empire can react. According to Wahyu, surprise is their greatest advantage. If they move quickly and quietly, the mission should be completed before the residents realize what is happening. Although most members of the team are confident, Rama remains cautious. He understands that dangerous situations can change within seconds and knows that underestimating criminals can lead to disaster. Upon arriving near the apartment complex, the officers quietly leave their vehicles and advance through the dark streets. The enormous building stands like a fortress, towering above the neighborhood. It appears abandoned from the outside, but everyone knows that hundreds of dangerous people are hiding inside. The officers split into groups and begin entering the lower floors. Their movements are precise and disciplined, allowing them to avoid drawing attention. Residents sleeping inside their apartments remain unaware of the approaching threat. While searching the lower levels, the team encounters an elderly man who is living in fear with his family. Instead of resisting, the frightened resident warns the officers that everyone inside the building works for Tama and that escaping once they are discovered will be nearly impossible. His words create tension among the officers, but Wahyu insists on continuing. The mission has already begun, and turning back is no longer an option. Rama notices the fear in the man's eyes and realizes that the situation may be far more dangerous than anyone expected. The officers continue climbing through the floors, arresting several criminals without causing major disturbances. For a brief moment, it seems that the operation is proceeding according to plan. However, unknown to the police, a young lookout working for Tama notices suspicious activity. The boy quietly informs the criminals about the intruders. Before anyone can stop him, the alarm spreads through the building. Suddenly, everything changes. At the top floor, Tamariadi is informed that police officers have entered his domain. Calm and completely confident, the crime lord smiles as he watches security monitors showing the officers moving through the building. Rather than escaping, Tama decides to turn the entire apartment complex into a death trap. Using the building's loudspeaker system, he announces to every resident that intruders have invaded their home. He promises free rent to anyone who kills the police officers and orders all criminals to hunt them down without mercy. The announcement creates chaos. Armed gang members emerge from their rooms and begin preparing for battle. Men carrying knives, machetes, and firearms rush into the hallways. Meanwhile, the officers suddenly realize that they have lost the element of surprise. Gunshots erupt throughout the building as criminals attack from multiple directions. What was supposed to be a quick mission transforms into a desperate fight for survival. Caught in a devastating ambush, several officers are killed almost immediately. Bullets tear through the narrow corridors while panic spreads among the survivors. Sergeant Jaka tries to organize a defense, but the enemy's numbers are overwhelming. Lieutenant Wahyu appears increasingly nervous, and some officers begin questioning whether important information about the mission was hidden from them. Rama remains focused, protecting his teammates and searching for a way to survive. As the criminals tighten their grip around the building, the remaining officers retreat to a safer location. They quickly realize that communication with the outside world has been cut off. No reinforcements are coming. Trapped inside a fortress filled with killers, the survivors understand a horrifying truth. They are completely alone, surrounded by enemies on every floor, and escaping alive may already be impossible. With death closing in from every direction, and Tama's forces preparing for an all out assault, Rama knows that his greatest challenge has only just begun. After discovering that they have been completely surrounded, the surviving officers take shelter in a small apartment while gunfire echoes throughout the building. Panic spreads among some members of the team as they realize that their mission has turned into a nightmare. The criminals know every corner of the building, while the police are trapped in unfamiliar territory. Sergeant Jaka tries to maintain order and keep everyone focused, but the loss of several officers has already shaken their confidence. Rama, however, remains calm and understands that survival now depends on quick thinking and teamwork. Outside the apartment, Tama's men begin searching floor by floor. The crime lord watches everything through security cameras and enjoys the chaos unfolding below. Sitting comfortably in his headquarters, he speaks with his trusted enforcers, Andy and Mad Dog. Andy is intelligent and calm, while Mad Dog is extremely violent and prefers hand to hand combat over guns. Tama trusts both men, believing they are more than capable of eliminating the intruders. Confident in his control over the building, he sees the trapped officers as entertainment rather than a threat. Meanwhile, Sergeant Jaka orders the remaining men to contact headquarters for backup, but they soon discover that their radios are useless. Their communication systems have been blocked, leaving them isolated from the outside world. Fear begins to grow among the officers, and some start questioning Lieutenant Wahyu's decisions. They wonder why they were sent into such a dangerous situation without proper support. Although Wahyu insists that everything is under control, his nervous behavior raises suspicion among the survivors. Suddenly, criminals armed with machetes and firearms begin advancing toward their position. A fierce gunfight erupts in the narrow hallways. Bullets fly in every direction as the officers desperately defend themselves. Despite being heavily outnumbered, they manage to eliminate several attackers. However, their ammunition is running low, and the enemy continues coming in waves. Realizing that they cannot remain in one place, Sergeant Jaka orders everyone to move before they are completely overwhelmed. During their escape, the officers encounter a group of criminals blocking the staircase. A brutal battle follows as Rama demonstrates his incredible fighting skills. Using speed, intelligence, and his mastery of martial arts, he manages to overpower multiple opponents. Even in the middle of chaos, he remains focused on protecting his fellow officers. His courage inspires the survivors, But each victory comes at a terrible cost as more enemies continue to appear. While searching for another escape route, the team becomes separated. Some officers are killed during intense exchanges of gunfire, leaving only a handful of survivors. Rama, Surgeon Jaka, and a few others manage to reach another apartment occupied by innocent residents. Terrified for their lives, the family inside reluctantly agrees to hide the officers from the criminals. Understanding the danger they are bringing upon the civilians, Rama apologizes and promises to leave as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the gang members searching the building soon arrive at the apartment. They begin checking every room and interrogating residents. As tension fills the air, the hidden officers remain silent, hoping not to be discovered. The criminals become suspicious and start destroying walls with machetes, searching for anyone hiding behind them. Each strike brings them closer to exposing the officers. The terrified family struggles to remain calm while the police prepare for the worst. At the last moment, the criminals are distracted and leave without discovering their hiding place. The survivors breathe with relief, but they know their luck will not last forever. Their ammunition is almost gone, and the enemy controls every floor. Staying hidden is no longer a solution. They must find another way out before Tama's forces eventually locate them again. Elsewhere, Lieutenant Vayu finally reveals a shocking truth. The operation was never officially approved by higher authorities. He organized the mission secretly because he wanted to capture Tama and earn recognition for himself. This revelation shocks Sergeant Jaka, who becomes furious after realizing that everyone has been sacrificed because of Vayu's ambition. The survivors now understand why no backup is coming. They were abandoned from the very beginning. As anger and mistrust grow among the remaining officers, Tama continues observing the situation from above. He is impressed by the resistance shown by the police, especially Rama. However, he remains confident that none of them will survive. He orders his men to intensify the hunt and promises even greater rewards to anyone who kills the intruders. Knowing that time is running out, Rama decides that simply hiding and waiting for rescue is no longer an option. If they want to survive, they must fight their way through the building, one floor at a time. But waiting ahead of them are Tama's most dangerous warriors, including the terrifying Mad Dog, whose reputation for brutality is known throughout the criminal world. Unaware that even greater horrors await them, Rama and the remaining survivors prepare themselves for another deadly confrontation, knowing that every step upward may bring them closer to either freedom or death. As the surviving officers recover from the horrifying revelation about Lieutenant Vayu's secret mission, the situation inside the building becomes even more desperate. Their ammunition is nearly exhausted. Several members of the team are dead, and hundreds of criminals are still hunting them. Every hallway, staircase, and apartment has become a battlefield. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Rama refuses to surrender. He knows that if they stop fighting, none of them will ever see their families again. With danger surrounding them from all sides, the remaining officers gather their strength and prepare for another attempt to escape. Sergeant Jaka is furious after learning that Wahyu's ambition is responsible for the disaster. He cannot believe that his men have been sacrificed for a personal mission that was never officially authorized. Wahyu tries to defend himself, claiming that arresting Tama would have made all the risks worthwhile. However, Jaka no longer trusts him. Their argument threatens to divide the group at the worst possible moment. Rama tries to calm the situation because he understands that internal conflict will only make things easier for their enemies. Meanwhile, Tama continues watching the survivors through his security system. Instead of feeling threatened, he enjoys the violence unfolding inside his building. He considers himself untouchable because countless criminals depend on him for protection. Sitting beside him are Andy and Mad Dog, his two most trusted men. Unlike the savage Mad Dog, Andy appears thoughtful and calm. Although he follows Tama's orders, there are moments when he seems uncomfortable with the bloodshed. Tama notices Rama's determination and begins to see him as a worthy opponent, but he remains certain that the police officer will eventually die like the others. As the officers continue moving through the building, they suddenly encounter another group of armed criminals. A fierce battle breaks out inside the narrow corridors. With bullets running low, the officers are forced to rely on close combat. Rama once again displays his incredible martial arts abilities, using every object around him as a weapon. He fights with speed and precision, taking down enemy after enemy. The brutal struggle leaves both sides wounded, but Rama's determination allows the survivors to continue moving. During the chaos, one of the officers suffers serious injuries. Realizing that the wounded man cannot continue, Rama decides to carry him to safety. Despite his exhaustion, he refuses to abandon his teammate. The dangerous journey through the building becomes even more difficult as criminals continue searching every floor. At one point, Rama and his companions are forced to hide inside another apartment while enemy patrols move nearby. Every sound could reveal their location, and the tension becomes unbearable. Eventually, Rama reaches a trusted civilian named Bovo, who lives inside the building with his family. Bovo secretly opposes Tama's rule and agrees to help the officers despite knowing that doing so could cost him his life. He hides the injured officer and offers temporary shelter. Rama thanks him and promises that one day Tama's reign of terror will come to an end. However, Rama knows he cannot stay for long. His duty demands that he continue fighting, no matter the consequences. Elsewhere, Sergeant Jaka decides to confront Tama directly. Believing that eliminating the crime lord is the only way to end the nightmare, he makes his way toward the upper floors. Along the way, he encounters Mad Dog, Tama's most feared enforcer. Unlike ordinary criminals, Mad Dog enjoys fighting with his bare hands. He considers guns dishonorable and prefers to kill his opponents through pure physical combat. Smiling with excitement, he welcomes the opportunity to test his skills against a trained police officer. A brutal hand to hand battle begins between Sergeant Jaka and Mad Dog. Jaka fights courageously and demonstrates impressive skill, but Mad Dog proves to be a terrifying opponent. Every punch, kick, and strike becomes more vicious than the last. The battle pushes both men to their limits, but Mad Dog's savage strength and relentless aggression eventually overwhelm the brave sergeant. Despite fighting with everything he has, Jaka is unable to defeat the monster standing before him. From his hidden location, Rama suddenly hears disturbing noises, echoing through the building. Deep inside, he senses that something terrible has happened. Unaware of the tragedy unfolding above, he prepares to continue his mission. At the same time, Lieutenant Wahyu begins acting strangely. Fear and desperation are consuming him, and his decisions are becoming increasingly unstable. The surviving officers no longer know whether they can trust the man who brought them into this nightmare. Meanwhile, Andy quietly observes the violence around him. Although he remains loyal to Tama, memories from his past begin haunting him. There is something deeply personal connecting him to Rama, a secret that neither Tama nor the other criminals fully understand. As fate slowly brings the two men closer together, long buried emotions and painful memories threaten to change everything. With Sergeant Jaka facing the deadliest enemy in the building, and Rama unknowingly approaching a truth that could transform his entire mission, the nightmare inside Tama's fortress grows even darker. The road ahead promises more bloodshed, more betrayals, and a confrontation that will push Rama beyond his limits. As Rama continues moving through the building, completely unaware of the tragedy unfolding above, Sergeant Jaka finds himself locked in a merciless fight against Mad Dog. The fearless sergeant refuses to surrender even though his body is covered in injuries and exhaustion is slowly taking over. Every strike he delivers is met with even greater violence from Mad Dog, who seems to enjoy the pain and chaos. Unlike ordinary criminals, Mad Dog treats combat as a game, and the more difficult his opponent becomes, the more excited he grows. Jaka fights with incredible courage, but he soon realizes that he is facing a man who possesses almost superhuman endurance and brutality. Despite his determination, Sergeant Jaka is ultimately overpowered. Mad Dog viciously attacks him and finally kills the brave officer after an incredibly brutal struggle. The death of Jaka marks one of the darkest moments of the mission. He had been one of the most respected leaders among the officers, and his loss leaves the survivors without their strongest source of guidance. Watching the battle from above through security cameras, Tama is pleased with the outcome. He praises Mad Dog for his loyalty and continues enjoying the destruction of the police team. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Wayu becomes increasingly desperate. The guilt of sending his men into this nightmare begins destroying his confidence. Fear and panic consume him as he realizes that his ambition has caused countless deaths. Knowing that no rescue is coming and believing that failure will ruin his career, Wahyu becomes obsessed with reaching Tama personally. He hopes that somehow killing the crime lord will erase his mistakes and justify the sacrifices that have been made. However, his unstable state makes him unpredictable and dangerous. Elsewhere, Rama continues searching for surviving officers while avoiding enemy patrols. Eventually, fate leads him to a shocking encounter. Standing before him is Andy, one of Tama's most trusted lieutenants. For a brief moment, both men freeze in disbelief. The dangerous criminal and the police officer recognize each other instantly. To Rama's amazement, Andy is not merely an enemy. He is Rama's older brother, whom he has not seen for years. The unexpected reunion overwhelms both men. Rama remembers the pain their family suffered when Andy disappeared and became involved with criminals. Their father had always hoped that Andy would return home one day, but years had passed without any contact. While Rama chose the path of justice by joining the police force, Andy became trapped in the criminal underworld and eventually rose through Tama's organization. Despite standing on opposite sides, the brothers still share a deep emotional bond. Andy is equally shocked to see Rama inside the building. He cannot understand why his younger brother would willingly enter such a deadly place. Rama explains that he came as part of a mission to arrest Tama, but the operation turned into a disaster. Although Andy works for the crime lord, he clearly still cares about his brother. He warns Rama that Mad Dog is hunting the remaining officers and that survival is becoming almost impossible. Rama pleads with Andy to leave the criminal world behind and return home, but Andy believes it is too late for redemption. As the brothers speak, memories from their childhood begin resurfacing. Both men remember the dreams they once shared and the promises they made to their family. The reunion forces Andy to confront painful truths about the choices he made. For years, he convinced himself that working for Tama was necessary to survive, but seeing Rama reminds him of the life he abandoned. Deep inside, Andy begins questioning his loyalty to the crime lord. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Wahyu finally reaches Tama's headquarters. Completely consumed by desperation, he confronts the crime lord with a gun. Wahyu angrily blames Tama for everything that has happened and demands that the nightmare end. However, Tama remains calm and amused by the frightened officer. Instead of showing fear, the crime lord mocks Wahyu and reveals that powerful people outside the building have been protecting his operations for years. According to Tama, corrupt officials and influential figures rely on him, making him virtually untouchable. Hearing this truth shatters Wahyu's hopes. He realizes that all his efforts have been meaningless. Before he can react properly, Tama manipulates the situation and turns the desperate officer into an even more broken man. The lieutenant's mind begins collapsing under the weight of guilt and fear, pushing him closer to complete despair. At the same time, Mad Dog learns about Rama's presence and becomes excited at the prospect of facing another worthy opponent. Unlike Tama, who relies on influence and strategy, Mad Dog lives only for combat. The thought of fighting Rama fills him with anticipation. Unknown to Rama, the most brutal battle of his life is rapidly approaching. As brother stands beside brother for the first time in years, and Mad Dog prepares for a confrontation he has been waiting for, the nightmare inside Tama's fortress reaches a turning point. Loyalty, family, and survival are about to collide in a battle where only the strongest will remain standing. The atmosphere inside the apartment building grows darker with every passing minute. Blood covers the hallways, bodies lie scattered across different floors, and the survivors are pushed closer to their limits. After the death of Sergeant Jaka, hope seems almost lost. Rama has discovered that Andy, one of Tama's most trusted men, is actually his older brother, and the emotional reunion leaves both men struggling with memories from their past. While Rama desperately wants to save his brother and bring him back to their family, Andy remains trapped between his loyalty to Tama and the love he still feels for his younger brother. Unknown to them, events unfolding elsewhere in the building are about to change everything. Inside his headquarters, Tama continues mocking Lieutenant Wahyu. The terrified officer points his gun at the crime lord, but Tama remains calm and confident. He explains that powerful and corrupt people outside the building protect his criminal empire. Politicians, businessmen, and officials benefit from his existence, making him nearly impossible to destroy. Hearing this truth crushes Wahyu completely. He realizes that the mission was doomed from the beginning and that all the officers who died were sacrificed for nothing. The weight of guilt becomes unbearable as he remembers the brave men who trusted him. Suddenly, consumed by despair and humiliation, Wahyu loses control. Unable to accept the consequences of his own mistakes, he shoots Tama in a desperate act of rage. For the first time, the seemingly untouchable crime lord falls. However, there is no sense of victory. Instead of feeling relieved, Wahyu appears broken and emotionally destroyed. Years of ambition and pride collapse in a single moment. The man who once dreamed of becoming a hero now stands surrounded by death and failure. But Tama's death does not bring peace. In fact, it creates even greater chaos. Mad Dog, who has always been fiercely loyal to his own twisted code rather than to Tama himself, is furious. Unlike other criminals, he never cared about money or power. What he values above all else is combat. Learning that Tama has been killed only strengthens his desire to face worthy opponents and prove his superiority. His attention immediately turns toward Rama. Meanwhile, Andy finally makes a life-changing decision. Seeing his brother once again has awakened emotions that he buried long ago. He can no longer ignore the pain his choices have caused. Although he spent years serving Tama, he realizes that his loyalty to the crime lord has brought him nothing except violence and regret. For the first time, he begins to believe that perhaps redemption is still possible. Determined to protect Rama, Andy decides to betray the organization he once helped build. Together, the two brothers move carefully through the building. Despite the years they spent apart, their bond quickly returns. They speak about their father and remember the family they left behind. Rama tells Andy that their father never stopped hoping for his return. These words deeply affect Andy, who struggles with guilt over abandoning the people who loved him. Yet before the brothers can discuss their future any further, danger arrives once again. Mad Dog intercepts them. The terrifying enforcer stands before them with a smile on his face. Unlike ordinary gangsters, he carries no gun. He considers firearms cowardly and believes true warriors should fight with their hands. Looking directly at Rama and Andy, Mad Dog welcomes the opportunity he has been waiting for. He sees the brothers not as enemies, but as challenges worthy of his strength. The narrow room soon transforms into an arena where only one side will survive. What follows is one of the most brutal battles imaginable. Mad Dog attacks with incredible speed and ferocity, forcing both brothers to fight together. Even with their combined skills, they struggle to keep up with the relentless monster before them. Every punch, kick, and strike shakes the room. Furniture is destroyed, walls are smashed, and blood begins covering the floor. Despite fighting two opponents at once, Mad Dog seems almost unstoppable. Several times, Rama and Andy believe they have defeated him, only for Mad Dog to rise again and continue attacking. His insane endurance and savage determination make him appear nearly invincible. The brothers suffer painful injuries as the fight grows increasingly desperate. But despite the punishment they endure, neither of them is willing to abandon the other. Years of separation have finally brought them together, and they refuse to lose each other again. Elsewhere, Lieutenant Wahyu's mind completely collapses. Overwhelmed by guilt and unable to face the consequences of his actions, the broken officer reaches the end of his journey. The man whose ambition caused the disaster has become a tragic figure consumed by regret. His story serves as a painful reminder of how pride and selfish desires can destroy countless lives. Back inside the room, the battle against Mad Dog reaches an even more violent stage. Exhausted and covered in wounds, Rama and Andy realize that ordinary tactics will not be enough. To survive, they must work together perfectly and push themselves beyond their limits. Failure means death. As the unstoppable Mad Dog unleashes his full fury, and the brothers fight for both their lives and their chance at redemption, the nightmare inside the building enters its most savage and unforgettable chapter. As the brutal battle against Mad Dog reaches its peak, Rama and Andy find themselves fighting for more than survival. Years of separation, regret, and lost memories have brought the brothers together again, but standing before them is a man who seems impossible to defeat. Mad Dog's body is covered in bruises, yet his terrifying smile never disappears. Instead of showing signs of weakness, he appears to enjoy every second of the punishment. To him, pain is meaningless. The fight itself is all that matters, and he intends to prove that no one in the building is stronger than him. Working together, Rama and Andy continue attacking from different directions. Their movements become more coordinated with each passing moment. Although they spent years apart, their instincts complement each other perfectly. They dodge Mad Dog's savage strikes and launch combinations that would have defeated ordinary men long ago, but Mad Dog refuses to stay down. His incredible endurance shocks the brothers, forcing them to keep fighting despite their exhaustion. Every second that passes drains their remaining strength. Furniture crashes around the room as the fight spreads into every corner. Tables are shattered, walls crack under the force of bodies being thrown against them, and blood stains the floor beneath their feet. Mad Dog uses every object around him as a weapon, attacking with animal-like aggression. At several points, Rama nearly loses consciousness from the punishment he receives. Andy also suffers serious injuries, but neither brother is willing to surrender. They know that if one of them falls, the other will soon follow. Mad Dog eventually manages to separate the brothers. Seizing the opportunity, he launches a vicious assault on Rama. Blow after blow lands with devastating force. Rama struggles to defend himself as the relentless enforcer pushes him closer to defeat. Watching his younger brother suffer awakens something deep inside Andy. For years, guilt and regret have haunted him, but in that moment, all he cares about is protecting his family. Refusing to lose Rama, Andy throws himself back into the battle with everything he has left. Together once again, the brothers manage to overwhelm Mad Dog through teamwork and determination. Even then, the monstrous fighter refuses to give up. He rises again and continues attacking with terrifying fury. The battle seems endless, but eventually Rama and Andy discover a small opening. Combining their efforts perfectly, they finally manage to overpower Mad Dog and bring the nightmare to an end. After one of the most savage hand-to-hand fights imaginable, the terrifying enforcer is finally defeated. Exhausted and barely able to stand, Rama and Andy stare at the fallen warrior. Despite everything, there is almost a sense of respect. Mad Dog had been a monster, but he had fought according to his own twisted code until the very end. For the brothers, however, there is no time to celebrate. The building is still full of criminals, and escaping remains their greatest challenge. Meanwhile, the chaos caused by Tama's death spreads throughout the apartment complex. Without their leader, many gang members begin turning against one another. Some attempt to flee, while others search desperately for whoever killed their boss. Confusion replaces the strict order that once controlled the building. For the first time since the nightmare began, the criminals are no longer united. Rama helps Andy to his feet and once again begs him to come home. He tells his brother that their father still loves him and that it is never too late to change. Andy listens carefully, but years spent in the criminal world have left deep scars on his soul. He knows that leaving behind his past will not be easy. Countless enemies have been created, and many people will never forgive the choices he made. Even so, seeing Rama's faith in him gives Andy something he has not felt in years: hope. As they make their way through the building, the brothers discover the aftermath of Lieutenant Wahyu's tragic downfall. The ambitious officer who had organized the mission is gone, leaving behind only the consequences of his mistakes. His dream of glory destroyed countless lives and nearly cost everyone their future. The survivors silently acknowledge the terrible price that pride and recklessness can bring. Eventually, Rama and Andy reach the lower floors, where a few surviving officers have managed to regroup. Shocked to see Rama alive, they quickly prepare to leave the building before more criminals arrive. Yet, even though the mission has technically ended, many questions remain unanswered. Tama may be dead, but the corruption he spoke about still exists beyond the walls of the apartment complex. Powerful figures who supported his empire remain hidden in the shadows, untouched by everything that has happened. Standing near the exit, Rama looks back one final time at the fortress that nearly became his grave. The nightmare inside the building has changed him forever. He entered as a young officer determined to complete his mission, but he leaves carrying painful memories, the loss of brave friends, and the burden of knowing that evil extends far beyond one man. Beside him stands Andy, a brother he thought he had lost forever. Their reunion has given both men a second chance, but the future remains uncertain. The world outside is waiting, and the enemies hidden within it may prove even more dangerous than the horrors they have just survived. As the first rays of sunlight begin appearing over Jakarta, the surviving officers finally emerge from the apartment building that had become a living nightmare. Behind them lies a fortress filled with bloodshed, broken dreams, and countless memories that will haunt them forever. Out of the elite squad that entered the building with confidence earlier that day, only a handful have survived. The mission that was supposed to bring glory instead turned into one of the deadliest disasters imaginable. Exhausted and covered in wounds, Rama and the remaining officers struggle to accept everything they have lost. Outside, emergency vehicles and authorities begin arriving at the scene. News of the massacre spreads rapidly, shocking those who had no idea what had happened inside the building. The surviving officers are rushed to safety, but physical injuries are not the only scars they carry. Memories of fallen friends and the horrors they witnessed remain deeply etched into their minds. Every survivor understands that life will never be the same again. Rama quietly reflects on the sacrifices made throughout the mission. He remembers Surgeon Jaka, whose courage and leadership inspired everyone until his final moments. He remembers the officers who died, believing they were serving justice. Most painfully, he remembers how Lieutenant Wahyu's ambition and desperation turned a dangerous mission into a catastrophe. Although Rama survived, victory feels hollow. Too many lives were lost, and too many questions remain unanswered. Beside him stands Andy, the brother he had not seen in years. Their reunion feels almost unreal. Growing up together, they had once shared dreams and hopes for the future, but life had taken them down completely different paths. While Rama became a police officer, Andi entered the criminal underworld and eventually rose through Tama's organization. Despite everything that happened, Rama still believes his brother deserves another chance. The thought of finally rebuilding the relationship gives him hope after so much suffering. However, Andy struggles with emotions of his own. He knows that countless crimes were committed while he served Tama. Although he never wanted to become a monster, he understands that many people will see him as one. The guilt he carries weighs heavily on him. Returning home will not erase his past, nor will it bring back the innocent life he abandoned years earlier. Yet, Rama refuses to judge him. To Rama, family remains family, no matter how painful the past may be. Before leaving the area, Rama once again asks Andi to come home and face their father together. He tells him that despite everything, their father never stopped loving him. Those words deeply affect Andi. For years, he believed that he had lost the right to be called a son or a brother. Hearing that forgiveness may still be possible awakens emotions he thought had disappeared forever. But Andi also knows that the criminal world never truly lets people walk away. Enemies and unfinished business still surround him. At the same time, investigators begin uncovering the shocking truth behind Tama's empire. His death has created chaos among criminal organizations, but his final words continue haunting those who survived. Before dying, Tama revealed that powerful individuals outside the building had protected him for years. Corrupt officials, businessmen, and influential figures had allowed his criminal network to flourish. His death removed one dangerous man, but the larger system that supported him remained untouched. These revelations trouble Rama deeply. He realizes that justice is far more complicated than he once believed. Arresting criminals and winning battles are not enough when corruption exists at every level. The experience inside the building has changed his understanding of the world. He entered the mission believing that good and evil were clearly separated, but now he understands that reality is far more complicated. Meanwhile, surviving criminals begin reorganizing. With Tama gone and Mad Dog dead, a dangerous power vacuum emerges. Rival gangs see opportunities to expand their influence, and whispers of new alliances begin spreading throughout Jakarta's underworld. The city itself is changing, and many fear that an even greater conflict is approaching. The bloodshed inside the apartment building may have ended, but another storm is slowly gathering beyond its walls. Andy senses this danger more than anyone. Having spent years within the criminal world, he understands that Tama's death will create instability. Many ambitious men will attempt to seize power, and some of them are far more dangerous than Tama himself. Although Rama wants his brother to leave everything behind, Andy knows that escaping his past may not be so simple. Certain responsibilities and unfinished matters still tie him to the underworld. As the brothers prepare to part ways, emotions run high. Rama desperately hopes that this reunion will not be their last. He wants his family to heal and dreams of a future where Andi can finally find peace. Andi, however, remains uncertain. The life he built cannot disappear overnight, and difficult choices lie ahead. Yet, for the first time in many years, he no longer feels completely alone. Looking toward the future, Rama understands that the nightmare inside the apartment building was only the beginning. Hidden enemies still remain. Corruption continues spreading through society, and new threats are rising within the shadows. The battle for justice is far from over. And somewhere within Jakarta's criminal underworld, forces are already beginning to move. Men hungry for power are preparing for war, setting the stage for events that will eventually lead to an even larger and deadlier conflict. The destruction inside Tamariyadi's apartment complex marked the end of one nightmare, but for Rama, the emotional scars remained fresh. Days after surviving the bloody operation, he found himself haunted by memories that refused to fade. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered the faces of his fallen comrades, the brutal screams echoing through the hallways, and the endless violence that had transformed the building into a battlefield. Although the world outside had returned to normal, Rama understood that his life had changed forever. Back at home, Rama was finally reunited with his pregnant wife. Seeing her again brought him a sense of peace that had been absent during the nightmare inside the building. She had spent days fearing the worst, unaware of whether her husband was alive or dead. Their emotional reunion reminded Rama why he had fought so desperately to survive. Despite his injuries and emotional wounds, he was grateful to have another chance with the family he loved. However, peace remained difficult to find. News reports about the failed operation spread across Jakarta, and many people questioned how such a disaster had been allowed to happen. Investigations into Lieutenant Vayu's unauthorized mission began, revealing shocking details about the chain of events that had led to the massacre. While some praised the surviving officers for their bravery, others criticized the operation and demanded answers. The names of the dead officers became symbols of sacrifice, but for the families left behind, no amount of praise could erase their grief. Rama himself struggled with complicated emotions. Although he had survived, he felt guilty for being alive when so many others had perished. Sergeant Jaka's death weighed heavily on his heart. The brave officer had given everything in the line of duty, and Rama often wondered whether things could have ended differently. The guilt became even stronger whenever he remembered the innocent civilians who had been trapped inside the building alongside the criminals. Meanwhile, Andy found himself facing a completely different battle. With Tama dead and Mad Dog gone, the criminal organization that had controlled the apartment building had collapsed. Yet freedom brought its own problems. For years, Andy had lived according to the rules of the underworld. Walking away from that life was not as simple as opening a door and leaving. Many dangerous people still knew his name, and old enemies remained scattered throughout Jakarta. Although Rama wanted him to return home immediately, Andy feared that his presence would only bring danger to their family. Despite these fears, Andy could not ignore the memories awakened by his reunion with Rama. Thoughts of their father and the home he had abandoned haunted him. For years he had convinced himself that returning was impossible, but now he wondered whether redemption might still exist. Deep inside, he longed for the chance to be more than a criminal, yet he knew that forgiveness, especially self forgiveness, would not come easily. At the same time, the criminal underworld was undergoing dramatic changes. Tama's death had created a massive power vacuum. Rival gangs and ambitious leaders began competing to seize control of territories left unprotected. Secret meetings were held behind closed doors, alliances were formed, and dangerous men prepared for conflicts that could reshape Jakarta forever. Many criminals viewed the chaos as an opportunity, while others feared that the coming violence would be worse than anything they had experienced before. Whispers spread about powerful organizations operating beyond the reach of ordinary law enforcement. Unlike Tama, these groups possessed money, political connections, and influence extending far beyond a single apartment building. Some of the names spoken in the shadows inspired fear even among hardened criminals. Rumors of rival families preparing for war began circulating throughout the city, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and tension. Rama remained unaware of how deeply these events would eventually affect him. He hoped that his nightmare had finally ended and that he could focus on rebuilding his life with his wife and future child. Yet fate had different plans. Powerful individuals had taken notice of the young officer who survived impossible odds. Some viewed him as a hero, while others saw him as a threat. Unseen eyes were watching his every move, waiting for the right moment to bring him back into a world of violence. Meanwhile, Andy quietly observed the shifting balance of power within the underworld. Years of experience had taught him that chaos often gave birth to monsters even more dangerous than those who came before. He sensed that darker forces were preparing to emerge and feared that one day his younger brother might become entangled in conflicts far greater than the nightmare they had already survived. As weeks passed, life seemed to settle into a fragile calm, but beneath the surface, tension continued to grow. Hidden enemies gathered strength, corrupt individuals protected their interests, and criminal empires expanded in secret. The war inside Tama's building had ended, but a much larger battle was slowly approaching. For Rama, the dream of living peacefully with his family remained alive. But destiny had already begun writing the next chapter of his story, a chapter that would force him to confront enemies far more powerful and dangerous than anything he had faced before. And somewhere within the shadows of Jakarta, the seeds of a new war were being planted, preparing the path for the events that would eventually explode in the Raid 2. After the chaos inside Tama's building, Jakarta slowly begins to look normal again on the surface. Markets reopen, traffic returns, and people continue their daily lives as if nothing happened. But beneath this normality, something has changed permanently. The massacre inside the apartment complex has shaken both the criminal world and law enforcement. Trust has weakened, and fear has quietly spread into places where confidence once existed. Rama tries to return to a simple life with his wife, hoping that the nightmare is finally over. He spends more time at home, avoiding unnecessary danger and focusing on the future of his unborn child. But peace does not come easily. Every loud noise reminds him of gunfire, every shadow feels like a threat, and every night brings back fragments of the building where he nearly died. Even though he survived, part of him is still trapped inside those walls. At the police department, Rama is officially recognized for his survival and bravery during the failed operation. However, the praise feels empty. Many officers who did not participate in the mission question what really happened inside the building. Official reports are unclear, and much of the truth about Lieutenant Wahyu's unauthorized operation is buried or hidden. Rama avoids speaking too much about it, knowing that the full story is too heavy for others to understand. Despite the silence, certain people begin paying attention to Rama's name, his actions during the mission, his ability to survive against overwhelming odds do not go unnoticed. Higher authorities and unseen figures begin marking him as someone with potential, not just as a police officer, but as someone who could be used in future conflicts. Rama, however, remains unaware that he is slowly becoming part of a much larger game. Meanwhile, Andy lives in hiding, trying to distance himself from his past. But escaping the criminal world is not simple. Even though Tama is dead, his network was only one part of a larger structure. Other gangs begin searching for surviving members of Tama's organization, and Andy becomes a target due to his former position. Every day becomes a struggle to stay unnoticed, as old connections threaten to pull him back into violence. Andy also faces internal conflict. His reunion with Rama has awakened emotions he had buried for years. He remembers the family he left behind and the life he could have had if he chose a different path. Yet, guilt prevents him from returning. He fears that his presence will only bring danger to his brother and father. Still, the idea of redemption continues to grow stronger in his mind. In the criminal underworld, power struggles intensify. With Tama gone, multiple groups begin competing for control over territories and resources. Smaller gangs merge into larger alliances, while stronger organizations absorb weaker ones. Violence increases across the city, but it is more organized now, less chaotic, more strategic. This is no longer the rule of one man like Tama, but the rise of something more structured and far more dangerous. Whispers begin spreading about powerful families and syndicates operating behind the scenes. These groups do not rely on fear alone. They use money, politics, and influence to control entire systems from the shadows. Unlike Tama's localized empire, these organizations operate on a much larger scale, extending beyond Jakarta and even beyond Indonesia. Their reach is global, and their power is deeply rooted in corruption. Rama begins to unknowingly cross paths with the consequences of this hidden world. Small cases at the police station start connecting to larger criminal activities. Evidence disappears, suspects are released without explanation, and investigations are quietly shut down. It becomes clear that someone or something is controlling outcomes from behind the curtain, but no one has enough proof to challenge it directly. At the same time, Andy becomes aware of these larger forces. His experience in the underworld allows him to recognize patterns others cannot see. He understands that Tama was never the top of the chain, only a piece in a much bigger system. This realization terrifies him because it means that even if one boss falls, the structure behind him remains untouched. As both brothers move through their separate lives, their paths begin slowly drifting toward another inevitable convergence. Rama continues serving as a police officer, unaware that his survival has made him a point of interest for powerful people. Andy, on the other hand, is trying to disappear, but the world he once belonged to refuses to let him go. The tension builds quietly, like a storm forming far beyond the horizon. No one speaks it openly, but everyone can feel it. Something larger is coming, something that will pull people like Rama and Andi back into violence, whether they want it or not. And deep within the hidden layers of corruption and crime, decisions are already being made that will shape the next phase of their lives.
The calm that follows the events inside Tamariyadi's apartment building is only an illusion. On the surface, Jakarta continues its normal rhythm: traffic, markets, police patrols, and daily life returning to routine. But beneath that calm, the city has quietly changed. The collapse of Tama's empire has not ended crime, it has only reshaped it. A vacuum of power now stretches across the underworld, and in that silence, stronger and more organized forces begin to rise. Rama tries to hold on to his new life with his wife, focusing on the future of their unborn child. He attempts to distance himself from everything that happened inside the building, but the memories refuse to fade. Every night he replays the same images: the narrow corridors, the endless gunfire, and the faces of the men he could not save. Even though he survived, peace feels unreachable. The world outside has moved on, but Rama remains trapped in what he experienced. At the police department, the official narrative of the mission is carefully controlled. Lieutenant Wahyu's unauthorized operation is quietly buried in paperwork, and only fragments of truth remain in the official reports. Rama and the surviving officers are recognized for their bravery, but the full story is never spoken aloud. Behind closed doors, higher authorities debate the implications of what happened, especially the fact that a single building had become a controlled fortress of crime. What troubles them most is Rama himself. Unseen figures within the system begin paying attention to him, not as just a survivor, but as a man who demonstrated exceptional ability under extreme conditions. His name starts appearing in discussions where powerful individuals quietly evaluate potential assets for future operations. Rama does not realize it yet, but his survival has placed him on a path that others are already shaping for him. Meanwhile, Andy lives in constant uncertainty. Although Tama is dead and Mad Dog is gone, the criminal world is far from stable. In fact, it is more dangerous now than before. New groups begin expanding aggressively, absorbing remnants of smaller gangs. Violence spreads across districts as different factions compete for control. What was once a single empire ruled by Tama is now breaking into multiple competing forces, each one more unpredictable than the last. And he becomes increasingly aware that escape is not as simple as walking away. His past still has weight, his name still carries meaning in the underworld, and some people have not forgotten what he once represented inside Tama's organization. Even if he wants redemption, the world he came from continues pulling him back. At the same time, rumors begin spreading about powerful syndicates operating far beyond local crime. These organizations do not rely on fear alone. They control politicians, law enforcement networks, financial systems, and international connections. Unlike Tama's brutal but localized rule, these forces operate with structure, discipline, and long-term strategy. Criminals in the streets begin whispering about families and systems that cannot be destroyed by simply killing one man. Rama slowly begins encountering signs of this hidden structure through his work. Cases are suddenly closed without explanation. Suspects disappear before interrogation. Evidence goes missing. Some arrests are blocked by unknown orders from above. It becomes clear that corruption is not isolated, it is systemic. The deeper Rama looks, the more he realizes that justice is being controlled from somewhere he cannot reach. Andy reaches the same conclusion from the opposite side. His experience in the underworld allows him to see patterns others ignore. He understands that Tama was never the true center of power, only a small part of something far larger. That realization changes everything for him. It means the violence inside the building was not an ending, but only a disruption in a much bigger system that continues to operate. Despite their separation, both brothers are moving closer to the same truth from different directions. Rama continues trying to protect his family, but the world around him is shifting. He does not yet know it, but his name is already being spoken in places where decisions about future conflicts are made. His survival has made him valuable in ways he does not understand, not just as a police officer, but as someone who can endure situations others cannot. Andy, on the other hand, faces a different future. His desire for redemption grows stronger, but so does the danger surrounding him. The criminal world does not easily release its members, especially those with knowledge and history. Every step he takes away from that life creates tension as unseen forces begin noticing his movements again. In the final moments of this chapter, the story makes one truth clear. The events inside Tama's building were never the end of the war. They were only the beginning of something much larger. A new conflict is forming, one built on corruption, power, and hidden control. And when it fully emerges, it will pull people like Rama and Andy back into a world they tried to escape. Not as survivors this time, but as players in a much bigger game,